Hey, so this is another episode of Max Chat. Max Duarte. My son Gavin is back there running the equipment. He is our producer and tech guy. And this is my wife Suzi Duarte. She has the Facebook page SoCal Corgis and the website SoCalCorgis.com. And we're here to talk about dogs, mostly ours. So, what's up, Suzi? Yesterday, we did a podcast and we brought up a kind of a touchy, emotional subject of tail docking, and it got a little crazy. I might have jumped the gun and said some things that I shouldn't put my words in a Susie's mouth. But anyways, Susie, do you want to say anything about that?
No, I think we're good. We hadn't discussed that. He had said yesterday that we're not going to dock tails anymore, and that was my decision. Excuse me, but it was kind of a one that we hadn't finalized ourselves, but I really appreciated that you agreed, and you said that yesterday about no longer docking my puppy's tails.
But we have an open mind. We understand why people did it. We understand that people like the way it looks. And we're not saying we will never do it again, but we don't plan to do it. And our minds may change, our feelings may change, but that's just our plan right now.
And it's not, for me, it's not about bashing anybody that does it whatsoever.
Right.
It's just, for me, it's not something I can bring myself to do any longer. Excuse me.
At this point.
Right.
So we got a lot of good response on that, and thank you to those people. But we thought today's subject we would go with. Well, I thought because I've been bringing up the subjects, kind of springing them on Susie because I wanted this to be more of a chat conversation, nothing, not an interview or just talking about dogs. But I thought having some subject matters would be give it a direction. And today I was going to ask about testing. I know you do a lot of testing, Susie. Yeah. Why do you do all this testing?
Well, I feel that if I'm going to be breeding dogs and producing puppies and bringing puppies into this world, I want them to be the best, the healthiest that I can prepare for. So I test the parents before I ever breed, and there are several different genetic tests that I do. And then I also check their hips because that can be an issue with the Corgi. So I want to know where I stand on all of those. And none of the puppies that we have here will be at risk. Now these are genetic issues here. They won't be at risk for these diseases. Now they may be carriers, yes, or clear, but they will not be at risk for developing the diseases. And the DNA testing is a piece of the puzzle. In many of the, not in all of them. Some of the genetic testing, if they're at risk, they actually can get the disease. However, some of them they show that they're predisposed for the disease. However, they may never get it. There's more to it than just the genetic testing.
Nutrition maybe has something to do with it?
Nutrition,
exercise,
keeping their weight down. Yeah, feeding a good diet. Yeah, that's all important. Love, attention.
Well, you said three big words there. I mean, not that they were big, but three words that I think could use some defining. What do you mean by at risk?
Okay, and in the diseases that I test for, the genetic testing, each parent has two genes. They can be clear or they can be affected by this disease. And they can pass one of those genes on to the puppy. So 2 from the mom and 2 from the dad. If the mother and father are clear, both, which means they do not carry that
genetic disposition.
That disposition, exactly. Excuse me. The puppies will be clear. There's no need to test the puppies. They will be clear, not at risk at all of that disease. And then there is, let's just say one of the parents is a carrier, which means they have one clear and one
carrier
affected gene for that disease.
Okay.
The father, let's say, is clear. Well, the mother may pass on either of those, the clear or the affected gene. The father will only pass on clear.
Okay.
Which means the puppies can be clear or a carrier, but not
At
at
risk.
risk, meaning having 2 of the affected genes.
Okay.
However, if both the parents are carriers, that sounds great. They're not going to be affected by the disease most likely, but they can produce actually clear puppies, safe clear puppies. They can produce carriers with 1 affected and 1 clear gene, and that same breeding can produce at-risk puppies who can eventually develop those diseases.
So you want one parent to at least be a clear?
Yes, absolutely, all the time for me. Bless you.
Sorry. Yeah, so that's how you always okay, now so that clears up that. But that's not the case in hips though. You're not shooting for clears. And what are you shooting for when you test hips, or what do you, and what's the test? It's not exactly a blood test or DNA test.
It's an x-ray.
It's an x-ray. Okay.
And it's good to get an experienced x-ray tech or vet that knows how to properly position the dog for the x-ray.
Oh.
And you generally, you don't usually have to sedate the dog. Sometimes you do. Sometimes they don't want to. They have to lay on their back and get in kind of a frog position. But for the most part, you don't have to sedate them or anything. My dogs never have had to. And they take the x-ray. The vet usually can look at it. My vet looks at it. And he was actually on the panel for the Orthopedic Foundation for Animals that would rate the results, rate the x-rays. There's a panel of, I believe, 3. They all look at it. They all kind of decide how they're going to rate those hips, if they're going to be passed or not.
Okay.
And then there are 3 stages of passing also. But then, so my vet will actually go over it with me, say what he thinks. And then you can send the x-rays
to the panel,
the Orthopedic Foundation for Animals. And they'll go through the panel, they'll rate it, and you can get certified hips.
Okay. Now, or not. Yeah. Now, corgis are a little bit different than other dogs because of their dwarf stature.
They're dwarfs.
They're dwarfs.
Yeah.
So a hip that doesn't look as good for a corgi or for another dog maybe breed okay for a corgi. Is that correct?
I would say a corgi hip that will say looks okay but doesn't look great in another breed might be considered really bad. In a breed that's known for not having hip problems, it might be considered really bad in that dog.
Because it's not normal.
Right. But with the corgi, you
give.
Really need to, you need to, and from what I understand is on the panel for the OFA, some of the vets take that into consideration, and some feel that all hips should be as perfect as possible regardless. And I think there are valid points to both of those views. Oh. Absolutely. So I think with the 3, if it is a 3-person panel, that you should have a good variety of opinions. Yeah. And I'm assuming they discuss it. I'm going to find out. I'm going to call and I'm going to get a little more information on that.
All right. Okay.
I was going to say real quick too, though, on the hips, there's another test. And it is it's pen hip. Oh. And the pen hip and OFA look at different things. One is more about the depth of the socket and how far the ball of the hip, how it's
in there,
how it's in there, and also the shape and conformation of the hip. And the pen hip is more interested in the how tight it is in the socket. They don't want wiggle room in the socket, whereas OFA is okay with wiggle room as long as the conformation is good. So you can get different opinions on hips depending on where you go. I have only done OFA, but I'm interested in doing pen just to see what the differences are.
Okay. And so you breed for the strongest, best hips possible, but you really just are doing your best for the people that get a dog from us. But once it's in their hands, it's really, there's nothing you could do because there's so many other variables, like you mentioned, and like you do with all the foods, the turmeric for inflammation, you do coconut oil and and the exercise is very important.
Exercise is so important, and proper exercise.
Improper is very bad.
Right. If you're taking a young puppy or a dog that's not old enough or ready enough to be doing strenuous exercise, hiking, running, under the age of 2, you're getting a little iffy if you're going to be taking them for what some refer to as forced exercise, even though it doesn't seem forced. They're on the leash and they get tired and all. You can run into issues with joints and tendons and such.
What about jumping up on beds and things? Well, I mean, you don't want your dog on a bed, but
no, a lot of people do.
I know, but didn't you tell me once something about like that's not good for like?
I don't think it's appropriate to let your corgi and probably any young dog. First of all, jumping down, they can break a leg. When
they're small.
Yes, and even when they're older. So there's that issue, and then you're probably not going to. It's probably not your dog's probably not going to be jumping up and down and up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
But if you have that going on a lot, like stairs, if your young puppy dog is running up and down stairs a lot, I think I would limit that.
Okay.
I would definitely limit the a lot of stairs. Do I mean don't ever let them, they're going to jump off the bed, don't freak out. They're going to jump off the couch, they're going to run up and down the stairs, and they're
tough.
going to happen. But I would try to be very, limiting as much as possible on that.
And then the most important from what I've seen is weight.
Oh, the weight on corgis is so important in so many issues.
Especially with the hips.
With the hips, yes. When you have a heavy corgi, you have the ball in the socket of the hip, and if it has this heavy weight that is carrying around, it can actually wear down the ball of the hip. And now your dog's got pain. It's looking at surgery. This is something so important that it's really, it's actually easy to avoid. It's very easy. You may have a hard time resisting giving them treats and overfeeding them, but it's something that's so easy to avoid if you can just properly feed and exercise your dog.
Right. And then, would you like to mention maybe a couple of the more important testing that you do, like what they are?
Yeah, I think the 3 most important, although I do about 7. For me, a really important one is DM, or degenerative myelopathy, and it's a neurodegenerative disease of the spinal cord, and it's been likened to ALS, the Lou Gehrig's disease.
Yeah.
And that one, the dogs will, if affected, will become paralyzed. It starts with they'll drag their back foot, then leg, and it can progress rapidly in say 6 months, or it can take a few years. And the thing about it is painless. They don't feel anything, but they will become paralyzed, and they will lose their ability to go potty on their own. I mean, they'll just go. So there's a lot with that that I would not want to see any dog like that. So I'm not going. That's a big one for me.
Yeah, that one usually happens later in life, though. Right?
It's considered an old age disease. However, it can strike at 8 years old, and I don't have any. Daisy's 7 now. She's young, acting. She plays, she runs, and if she next year started becoming paralyzed, it would be. And again, at any age, just say your dog is healthy, 14, you're so proud of your dog that's so healthy, and now it goes paralyzed. Right. So any age.
And then again, I don't know how to stress this enough. We're not in competition with any other breeders. We think we have great camaraderie with them. We don't need to compete with them because we don't have enough dogs to go around.
Yeah, and I never will.
Yeah, we never will. And we don't want to talk bad about other breeders at all, but we want to inform people who are buying dogs or looking to adopt whatnot, and help them ask the right questions and discourage breeders that aren't doing the right thing to do it, because we feel it's the right thing. But when some breeders will say, well, I've never had a problem. Is it sometimes because, they've sold a dog and, 10 years later, this issues comes up. People don't think to go back to the breeder and say, hey.
I do. And then this genetic testing for DM, the degenerative myelopathy, I think has only been around about 9 years.
There you go.
So you weren't really, and the only way to actually to determine definitely that that's what they have is an autopsy or a necropsy. And so it's basically you rule out other things, because there are disc issues, there are back injuries, there are all other different kind of things. So by ruling those out while the dog is still alive is how they often will be diagnosed with DM.
Right.
So,
but,
yeah.
What?
It's almost 15 minutes.
15? Wow. Oh, no, we need way more time. Okay. So DM, let's just name the 3, and then maybe we can do this, continue on with the same subject next podcast.
Okay, so
we have more, huh?
And what I wanted to say too is, if you have your dog tested, or that your dog has is at risk, meaning the 2 affected genes for DM, it's not certain at all that they will get it.
Right.
There's a lot with this one, because there's not a lot of testing going on. Not a lot of dogs are being tested to know that that's what it is for sure. But many dogs have been tested and never show any signs of DM,
or never gotten it, and they probably had good exercise and good nutrition, and
they maybe just didn't get
or
it,
they just got lucky.
Maybe they passed away before they showed any symptoms. That's for sure. That's one thing for sure that could happen.
Okay,
but
so it's
don't be terrified.
Okay, well, there's a lot more for us to talk about, but we don't want to get these going too long. We want you guys to stay interested and return customers. We're not even selling anything, but she's gonna go get a puppy or 2 to show before we leave, and our next podcast is gonna stay on the subject of testing. Like she said, there are 2 more major ones and about 7 in total, all the way down to eye testing she does. The tests are getting cheaper. I think that's the case too for breeders. In the past, they're probably very expensive, but all this kind of DNA stuff's coming out cheaper and cheaper every year. Who we got here?
This is a tri-girl. These are Layla's puppies.
Yes.
And this is a redheaded tri-color girl. I mentioned the other day, she has black on her head now, but that will recede back and she'll have a redhead.
Can you hear?
Oh.
Okay, so redheaded tri.
Redheaded tri-girl from Layla. And this is a red boy from Layla.
What's his name?
Well, I call him